The morning sun in Enugu shone brightly as Tobena prepared for their escape. He rehearsed the plan in his mind, trying to calm his racing heart. Adaku left for her usual shopping trip, giving Tobena the opportunity he needed. He quickly packed the small bag with essentials and grabbed Nduka's hand. "We're going on an adventure, my boy," Tobena whispered, trying to mask his anxiety with a smile. They slipped out of the house, moving quickly through the crowded streets. The bustling market was full of life, and Tobena tried to blend in with the crowd. Every noise made Tobena's heart pound faster. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see Adaku storming towards them. As they neared the bus station, a voice called out from behind them, "Tobena!" Tobena froze. He turned to see Adaku, her face twisted with fury. She had come home early and found them missing. Tobena's mind raced, trying to think of an escape. "Where do you think you're going?" Adaku spat, grabbing Tobena's arm with a vice-like grip. "We're just taking a walk," Tobena stammered, pulling Nduka closer. Adaku's eyes blazed with anger. "You think you can leave me? You think you can take my son away?" Before Tobena could react, Adaku yanked Nduka from his grasp. Tobena tried to fight back, but Adaku's strength, fueled by her rage, overpowered him. She slapped him hard, and he stumbled backward, falling to the ground. "You're not going anywhere," Adaku hissed, dragging Nduka away. Tobena lay on the ground, his face throbbing with pain and his heart heavy with despair. The people around them stared but did nothing, too afraid to intervene. Back at the house, Tobena sat in silence, his mind replaying the failed escape. His phone buzzed, and he saw a message from Omalicha, the nurse who had helped him in the hospital. "Are you okay?" she had written. Tobena's hands trembled as he typed back, "No. We tried to leave, but she found us." Within minutes, Omalicha called. "Tobena, listen to me. You can't give up. We will find a way." Omalicha had always wanted to help people. That's why she became a nurse. But her dedication to helping people like Tobena came from something personal. Years ago, her sister Rita had been hurt badly by her husband. Rita didn't survive, and Omalicha promised to help others who were suffering. As Omalicha listened to Tobena over the phone, she felt a strong connection to his pain. She had heard the same hurt in her sister's voice. Determined to help Tobena, she kept a record of his injuries and what he told her. "You're doing the right thing, Tobena," she said softly. "I know it's hard, but you have to be strong for Nduka." Tobena's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Omalicha. I don't know what I would do without your help." Omalicha smiled gently, her determination growing stronger. "We'll get through this together. You're not alone." As Tobena lay in bed that night, memories of his past flooded his mind. Growing up, Tobena had always been a gentle soul. His parents had taught him to be kind and respectful, valuing peace over conflict. His father also taught him that boys were to be tough and not show weakness. He was taught that men should protect their families and never cry. This made it hard for Tobena to accept that he was a victim. When he met Adaku at the university, she was vibrant and strong-willed, qualities that initially attracted him. They fell in love quickly, and Tobena believed he had found a soulmate. But as time went on, Adaku's strong will turned into control. She criticized and belittled him, making him doubt his worth. Tobena, who had always avoided confrontation, found himself increasingly submissive, believing that if he just tried harder, he could make her happy. He found himself gradually choosing to stay silent and submissive to maintain peace. Tobena had somehow internalized that this was the way to handle conflict. Now, with Adaku's abuse escalating, Tobena felt trapped by his own passivity. He didn't know how to fight back, and he feared the consequences of doing so. This fear had paralyzed him, making him feel powerless against Adaku's reach. As a young man, Tobena was strong and athletic, but his strength couldn't stop Adaku's hurtful words and actions. Her words hurt more than any physical pain, leaving deep scars on his heart. "Why do you stay with her?" Omalicha asked one evening during a phone call. "You're strong, Tobena. You could defend yourself." Tobena sighed. "It's not that simple. I loved her. Or at least I loved who she used to be. And I'm afraid of what people will say if they find out. They'll laugh at me. A man being hurt and beaten by his wife? They'll think I'm weak." Omalicha responded back. "Being strong isn't just about muscles, Tobena. It's about being brave and standing up for yourself and your son. Well, you've already taken the first step by telling the truth." Tobena nodded, realizing she was right. Knowing that he had Omalicha on his side gave him some form of strength. Over the next few days, Tobena and Omalicha worked hard to gather more evidence. Tobena recorded his interactions with Adaku, capturing her threats and anger. He wrote down every time she hurt him, both physically and emotionally. Omalicha also contacted her network for legal advice and support. She connected with women's rights activists and shelters, getting ready for the day Tobena and Nduka could live safely. She also started planning how they could take legal action against Adaku. With Omalicha's help, Tobena was ready to fight back. The battle ahead would be tough, but he was no longer alone. Together, they would seek justice and reclaim their lives from the shadows of abuse. The following days were filled with unease and preparation. Tobena knew that another escape attempt would be filled with danger, but he also understood that it was a necessary step towards securing a better future for himself and Nduka. Omalicha, who had become a steadfast ally, offered support and guidance. She met with Tobena at the school where he was a teacher and provided him with a list of resources and contact numbers for emergency shelters, counseling services, and legal aid. One of those days, she looked at him with a mix of concern and determination. "Remember, Tobena, you have options. You don't have to face this alone," she said, handing him a small booklet with important information. Tobena nodded, grateful for her support. "Thank you, Omalicha. You've been a lifeline." Over the next few days, he acted as though everything was normal, all the while discreetly packing essentials and gathering the evidence he had documented. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Adaku's mood took a dark turn. She scrutinized Tobena's every move, her irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. "Why are you so quiet, Tobena? What are you hiding?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Tobena tried to stay calm. "I'm just tired, Adaku. It's been a long day." But Adaku wasn't convinced. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You're lying! I can tell!" As tension mounted, Nduka, sensing the growing hostility, began to fidget in his seat. "Mommy, can I be excused?" he asked softly. Adaku snapped her gaze towards him, her expression softening slightly. "Of course, Nduka. Go to your room," she said, her voice gentler. Once Nduka was out of earshot, Adaku's demeanor shifted back to hostility. "You're hiding something from me," she accused, standing up and advancing towards Tobena. Tobena stood his ground, his heart racing. "I'm not hiding anything, Adaku, but we need to talk. This can't continue." Before he could say more, Adaku lashed out, her hand striking him across the face. The impact sent Tobena stumbling back, his vision blurring with tears of pain and frustration. "You dare talk back to me?" she screamed, her voice echoing through the house. At that moment, Nduka peeked around the corner, his eyes wide with fear. "Daddy!" he called out, his voice trembling. Tobena's heart broke. at the sight of his terrified son. "It's okay, Nduka. Go back to your room," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But Adaku's anger was far from spent. She grabbed a heavy glass from the table and hurled it at Tobena. He barely had time to react as it struck his shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. Pain radiated through his body, but he refused to let it overwhelm him. He had to stay strong for Nduka. Adaku's rage only intensified. "You're worthless, Tobena! Worthless!" she screamed, advancing on him again. Seizing the moment, Tobena scrambled to his feet and called out to Nduka. "Nduka, run! Get out of the house!" he shouted. Nduka hesitated for a moment, then bolted towards the front door. Adaku turned her attention to the boy, her expression murderous. "Don't you dare!" she yelled. But Nduka was already outside, his small figure disappearing into the night. With Adaku distracted, Tobena made a split-second decision. He grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and smashed it on the floor, creating a diversion. "Run, Tobena, run!" his mind screamed. As Adaku turned back towards him, her face twisted with rage, Tobena bolted for the door. He burst outside, his breath coming in ragged gasp. Nduka was already at the gate, his eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, I'm scared," he cried. Tobena scooped him up, his heart pounding. "It's going to be okay, Nduka. We are getting out of here," he promised, his voice firm. They ran through the dark streets, Tobena's mind racing with fear and determination. He knew that they had to find a safe place, somewhere Adaku couldn't reach them. He remembered the emergency shelter Omalicha had mentioned and made his way there, praying they would be accepted. When he finally arrived, Tobena banged on the door, his desperation evident. A kind-faced woman opened it, her face widening in concern as she took in their appearances. "Please, we need help," Tobena gasped. The woman nodded and ushered them inside. "You're safe now," she said gently. "We'll take care of you." As they settled into the shelter, Tobena felt a glimmer of hope. They had escaped Adaku's grasp, but the road ahead was still uncertain. With Omalicha's help, he was determined to build a new life for himself and Nduka, free from fear and abuse. In the safety of the shelter, Tobena held Nduka close, whispering reassurances. "We're gonna be okay, my boy. We'll get through this together," he promised, his voice filled with resolve. For the first time in a long while, Tobena felt a sense of peace. They were safe, and with Omalicha's support, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey to healing and rebuilding their lives had just begun, but Tobena was determined to see it through, one step at a time. As the date of the court hearing drew closer, Tobena felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The shelter had become a temporary home for him and Nduka, and he was grateful for the support and safety it provided. Omalicha continued to be a pillar of strength, guiding him through each step of the legal process and offering emotional support. One evening, as Tobena sat in the common room of the shelter, he received a phone call from his lawyer, Mrs. Nwankwo. "Tobena, I've just been informed that Adaku has hired a high-profile lawyer. They plan to fight hard." Tobena's heart sank, but he quickly regained his composure. "Thank you for letting me know, Mrs. Nwankwo. We will be ready." The days leading up to the court date were filled with preparation. Tobena practiced his testimony with Omalicha and Mrs. Nwankwo, ensuring he was confident and clear in presenting his case. The support from his friends, especially Obi, who had witnessed some of Adaku's outbursts, bolstered his resolve. The morning of the hearing arrived, and Tobena dressed in his best clothes, a simple but neat outfit that reflected his determination and dignity. He held Nduka's hand tightly as they walked into the courtroom, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. In the courtroom, Adaku sat with her lawyer, a stern-looking man with a reputation for being ruthless. Adaku's eyes were cold and calculating, a stark contrast to the loving wife that she had once pretended to be. Tobena took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was there, to protect Nduka and to reclaim their lives. The proceedings began, and Mrs. Nwankwo delivered the evidence meticulously. The recordings of Adaku's abuse played in the courtroom, the chilling words and sounds of violence filling the air. Tobena's journal entries detailing each incident with painful clarity were submitted as evidence. When it was Tobena's turn to testify, he stood tall, his voice steady despite the emotions churning within him. "I loved my wife," he began, looking directly at the judge. "But the woman I loved became someone I no longer recognized. She hurt me, physically and emotionally, and she hurt our son by extension. I am here today to ensure that my son and I can live without fear." Adaku's lawyer cross-examined him aggressively, trying to discredit his testimony. "Mr. Tobena, isn't it true that you have a history of exaggerating events?" Tobena met his gaze unwaveringly. "No, that is not true. Everything I have documented is accurate. I have no reason to lie." Obi testified next, recounting the times he had seen Tobena's injuries and the changes in his demeanor. His words added weight to Tobena's claims, painting a clear picture of the suffering he had endured. As the hearing progressed, Adaku took the stand, her demeanor calm and composed. She denied the accusations, portraying herself as a victim of Tobena's alleged incompetence and irresponsibility. Her lawyer painted a picture of a loving wife pushed to her limits by a neglectful husband. Mrs. Nwankwo, however, was relentless. She exposed inconsistencies in Adaku's testimony and highlighted the strength of the evidence against her. "Your Honor, the truth is clear. Tobena and Nduka have suffered immensely, and they deserve protection and justice." The judge adjourned the court for a brief recess, and Tobena sat with Nduka in the waiting area, his heart pounding. Omalicha joined them, offering words of encouragement. "You've done incredibly well, Tobena. Whatever happens next, know that you have fought bravely for yourself and your son." When the court reconvened, the judge delivered his verdict. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, it is clear that Tobena has endured significant abuse at the hands of his wife. "I am granting the restraining order and awarding full custody of Nduka to Tobena. Additionally, Adaku will undergo mandatory counseling and be monitored closely." Tobena's relief was overwhelming. Tears streamed down his face as he hugged Nduka tightly. They had won. They were free. As they left the courtroom, Tobena turned to Omalicha. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Omalicha smiled warmly. "You don't have to thank me, Tobena. You've shown incredible courage. Now, it's time to start a new chapter." Tobena looked at Nduka, his heart swelling with hope. They had a long road ahead, but they would face it together, free from fear and full of possibilities. The seeds of hope had been planted, and now it was time to nurture them into a future filled with love and safety. As they walked towards the parking lot, a commotion erupted behind them. Tobena turned to see Adaku, her face twisted in rage, storming towards him. Before he could react, Adaku's lawyer tried to hold her back, but she broke free, pointing a trembling finger at Tobena. "This isn't over, Tobena!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the parking lot. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I will make you pay for this. You have no idea what I'm capable of." The threat hung in the air, chilling Tobena to his core. Omalicha quickly stepped between them, shielding Tobena and Nduka. "Stay away from them, Adaku," she warned. "This is a court order. Violate it and you'll face serious consequences." Adaku's eyes flashed with a dangerous intensity. "You think you can protect him? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Tobena watched as Adaku was escorted away by court security, her threat still ringing in his ears. He felt a shiver run down his spine, realizing that the battle was far from over. As they drove away, Tobena couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was lurking on the horizon. That night, as he lay in bed, Tobena couldn't sleep. His mind replayed Adaku's words over and over. What did she mean? What was she planning? The fear gnawed at him, threatening to unravel the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. In the stillness of the night, Tobena vowed to stay vigilant. He would protect Nduka at all costs. But deep down, he knew that the real fight had only just begun. What secret was Adaku hiding? And how far will she go to reclaim control? The answers lay in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered in part 3. See you then.